Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to try to make this video quick. So some 24-bit recorders are actually a lot better than 32-bit float recorders, and other 24-bit recorders are better than lesser quality 24-bit recorders. What I wanted to test is the limiters. Now, there are many ways to prevent clipping with 24-bit recorders, and I hate to say this because I know it's not the gear, it's your skills that are the most important, but gear does matter. It does. When I pushed all these recorders as hard as I could, going from a whisper all the way to screaming as loud as I could, just 4 inches off the microphone, the more expensive recorders handled it well. There was no distortion, it sounded gorgeous. The cheaper recorder, it did it. It sounded better than if I didn't have the limiter turned on, but it definitely was not able to handle anywhere near as much, and it had a lot of distortion that the other recorders did not have. Those recorders, even though they're also 24-bit, they have much more dynamic range than this one, and their preamps are so clean that I could also set the gain much lower with my levels at -18 and -20 and have all that extra headroom. And if I need to, I could raise it up from -18 to -20 all the way up to 0 and still have a noise floor that is less than -60 with no noise reduction required. That's how clean they are. You do not have that luxury with this. But despite all that, this is still my most used field recorder. This is the Zoom H6 All Black Edition. And I like it because it's small. It's got more than enough inputs for most things. I like having the convenience of the capsules if I have to travel light, and that's all I could have with me. It comes in a nice case with numerous mounting options. And I got a battery pack here with a right angle plug. So it runs all day even with phantom power, and there's nothing to get snagged on. I really like the H6. I like the features that it has, the amount of inputs that it has. The user interface makes a lot of sense to me, and it doesn't weigh 10 pounds. Although this current setup's definitely weighs a few pounds, but it's still a lot less than my other recorder. And I've still been able to get great results with the H6. Sorry, I can't talk today. So I've gotten recordings with noise floors that are at -84 with the H6 or -79 with the H6. I mean, it's always pretty low. If you know the limitations and you know ways to get around them, it doesn't really matter anymore. But again, I wanted to test the limiters. I was curious. Since we don't have the luxury of just setting the gain lower on the H6 and having great clean audio like we do on the other recorder, how good are the limiters? Because you're kind of stuck with the limiters or the safety tracks, but the safety tracks on the H6 are only available on the capsule. So in this case, I have the EXH6 capsule installed. The problem with that capsule is it does not provide phantom power, and the preamps on it are actually worse than the ones that are built into the H6 itself. So that's something to keep in mind. So that's kind of the only two ways to protect yourself from clipping. You either use the capsule for the safety tracks or you use the limiters. And I think you could use both at the same time if you want to, if you're really that afraid of something clipping. But let's just go over the results. So what I do is I start with kind of like an interview type test. So I talk in my normal tone of voice, and then I just suddenly laugh. I just start laughing, and it gets loud, and when you have your peak set a little higher, which in this case you kind of have to on the H6, it will set off the limiter. So when that limiter engages, I'm seeing how it handles a laugh, because that's a pretty realistic scenario. And then what I do after that test is I'll do a whisper quiet voice, and then I just scream as loud as I can. to really push the limiter. And what I found is after all the tests were done, the expensive recorders just were a lot better than the H6. But the H6 did a lot better than I thought it would. So even though it was significantly worse than my higher quality 24-bit recorders, it's still, these are usable limiters. You'll be just fine using the limiters on the H6. What they have when they're pushed really hard, it's a soft clipping sound. It's there, but it is subtle. It's noticeable, but it's like, it's pretty quiet. With noise reduction software, you might be able to fix that. I can't make any guarantees there, but it worked. And it sounded a lot better than it would have if I just kept the limiter turned off and let it clip and then try to fix it in post, which is a really stupid way of doing things. Anyone that says, oh, I'll just do this and fix it in post, I'll put it all off till later, they don't know what they're talking about, and they're not the kind of person that you want to work with. But yeah, the limiters were perfectly fine on the H6. I mean, for what this recorder is, ideally, you don't need to use them. But if you do need to use them, they're there. And it's a lot better than clipping. It's kind of like picking the lesser of two evils. You don't like this and you don't like that, but you would much rather have option A than option B. That's how I would describe the limiters on the H6. Really limiters in general, but especially the ones on the H6, because those limiters sound really good. These limiters, they're usable, but I wouldn't say they sound fantastic. But my point is, although they were the worst limiters that I've tested, they are usable limiters, and they're much better than just getting distorted audio and letting your recording clip like crazy and hoping that you can fix it all later. So there we go. I just wanted to talk about it because I know this recorder, you know, it gets a lot of praise and it gets a lot of hate too, and most of it's from people that just don't know what they're doing. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. People talk about how noisy it is and how all the recordings are so unusable. I'm like, I don't know. I've gotten a lot of recordings that are really, really good with very low noise that surpass ACX standards, and I did that all on an H6. So, but yeah, I used to have problems with noise on all sorts of different things. Even that other mixing console over there, which actually has very high quality preamps, and I thought it was the preamps for all that time. And then when I actually learned a little and started to know what I was talking about, then I'm like, oh, actually this was good the whole time. It was just me being an idiot. But the H6 is not a high-end recorder, but it's not a bad recorder by any means. It's still my most used recorder today. So there we go. Use the limiters if you need to. Don't be afraid to. I actually thought they'd be worse than they were. I was expecting them to be a disaster, and they're not great, but they're not bad. They're perfectly usable. I'd much rather have the limiters turned on than having a distorted signal that's clipping all the time. But that's all for this one, and I will see you next time.